All right, so get this. We're going deep on Sheldon Johnson.
Oh, okay.
This guy, right? He does 25 years for armed robbery.
Yeah.
Finds redemption, becomes like a big advocate for criminal justice reform.
Hmm.
Even gets on the Joe Rogan Experience.
Wow, okay.
And then, bam, 38 days later,
What?
arrested for murder.
No way.
Yeah, it's nuts, right?
That's wild.
So we're going to try to figure this whole thing out.
Okay.
Using this YouTube video essay that breaks down, all the crazy twists and turns.
I'm interested.
Really gets into rehabilitation, recidivism, all the gray areas.
Yeah, I think this case, what really gets me is it throws everything we think we know about the justice system out the window.
Right.
Makes you question, can people really change, you know?
Yeah, for sure.
What's the point of these programs, you know?
Exactly.
Is it all just a facade?
Okay, so let's rewind to the beginning.
Okay.
Sheldon grew up in the Martin Luther King Jr. Towers in Harlem.
I see.
And this video, it doesn't shy away from the reality.
Uh-huh.
Poverty, crime, it's all around him.
Right.
And this cycle of incarceration, it's deep in his family.
Mm.
Father, grandfather, even his 12-year-old son, all behind bars.
It's like a textbook case of how these systemic issues just trap people.
Mhm.
Poverty, lack of opportunities, education.
It all adds up.
It all leads to this, you know?
Absolutely.
And for Sheldon, with his dad being deaf,
Oh, wow.
yeah, a deaf drug dealer who used him as a translator for deals.
No kid?
Oh, yeah, it's all in there.
Wow, so he's exposed to all of
It's
this.
from a young age, yeah.
It's almost like, how could he not
Right.
end up on that same path?
Yeah, exactly.
And that's what we see.
Uh-huh.
Starts as a lookout, then he's dealing drugs,
Right.
racking up charges,
It's the cycle.
spending time in Rikers.
It's like you almost can predict it.
Right.
But then there's this other layer.
Oh,
This lawyer, Josh Dubin,
okay.
he was a big advocate for Sheldon. He argued that the 50-year sentence he got,
For the robberies.
yeah, for 2 armed robberies,
That seems,
harsh.
50 years.
Well, in one of them, the victim only needed 2 stitches.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so Dubin argued it was way too much.
So he ends up serving 25 years.
That's still a long time.
It is, and that's where things take a turn.
What do you mean?
This is where we start to see the potential for rehabilitation.
Oh, okay.
Hope,
I'm listening.
He starts journaling, reflecting on his life, and he dives headfirst into education.
Seriously?
Yeah, he goes from getting his GED
Wow.
to a bachelor's degree.
Yeah.
Behavioral science.
No way. All while he's in prison.
All while he's in prison.
That's incredible.
Right. It shows you, even in that environment, there's that possibility
Enough change.
of growth. Yeah.
It's inspiring in a way.
It is. And it's not just about him,
Yeah.
He starts using what he learns to help other inmates
Real.
with their cases.
That's amazing.
He becomes this model inmate, right?
Yeah.
There was even, I think it was BuzzFeed, did an article on him
Really?
back in 2016 advocating for his release.
Interesting.
And eventually, it works.
He gets out.
Gets out after 25 years.
So what happens then?
Immediately jumps in to making amends.
Okay.
He's on this podcast called Success After Lockdown.
Never heard of it.
Yeah, it's interesting, talking about how he's never going back. And then, boom, he lands a spot on Joe Rogan.
Joe Rogan, that's huge.
Huge, right?
Yeah, what does he talk about?
He's advocating for education, highlighting the low recidivism rates.
For people who, get degrees and stuff.
Exactly.
Here.
And he gets a job with the Queen's Defenders.
Queen's Defenders, I know them.
Yeah, working with troubled youth.
Wow.
Trying to, steer them away from the path he went down.
So he's really living the message.
He is. It's like this perfect redemption arc.
And Joe Rogan, that's the peak of it, right?
It is.
He made it.
He talks about going from, the bowels of hell to the sky above the clouds. Powerful stuff.
It seemed real,
Yeah.
Till 38 days later,
Oh, no.
he's arrested for murder.
What?
And not just murder.
What else?
Dismemberment
Oh, my.
of his childhood friend,
No.
Colin Small, who was also a former inmate with him.
I don't even know what to say.
It's a lot, right?
Yeah, the details are just
Gruesome.
gruesome. Yeah. There's a 911 call about gunshots.
Right.
A neighbor saying they heard someone begging for their life.
It's crazy.
And then they find Colin Small's body.
In pieces?
Half in his apartment, half at Sheldon's place.
Along with concrete
I know.
and a hazmat suit.
What is going on?
And get this, CCTV footage shows him
Sheldon.
going in and out of Colin's apartment.
So he's involved.
In different clothes, like he's trying to disguise himself.
This is insane. It's like, who is this guy?
Right.
It's like a complete 180 from everything we thought we knew.
It makes you question everything, right?
Yeah, was it all an act? Did something snap?
It's mind-boggling. It really is.
But then you have his father, his supporters.
They say he's innocent.
They're standing by him, saying he's a good man.
How can they believe that?
I don't know. It's hard to reconcile.
With the evidence.
Right.
And what about Joe Rogan? What's he saying?
He's expressing disbelief like everyone else.
Yeah.
Even speculating that maybe, prison hardened him.
I mean, could that be it?
It's possible,
Yeah,
right?
it's possible.
And the internet, forget about it.
Oh, I bet.
It's exploding. People saying, see, I told you so. The judge was right to give him 50 years.
Right.
Others are questioning the whole system.
Like, can anyone really be rehabilitated?
Yeah, it's a mess.
So what do we make of all this?
That's the million-dollar question, right?
It really is. It's like this case forces us to look at human nature.
Yeah.
Is change even possible? Are we all just, products of our past?
It feels like we're going down a rabbit hole here.
Down the rabbit hole.
Where do we even begin to unpack all of this?
Well, I think we need to start with those systemic issues.
Okay.
The ones that shaped Sheldon's early life. We can't ignore that.
Good point. Let's dig into that.
It's tough, right? Because we're talking about these big systemic issues.
Yeah.
But it's not about, giving anyone a free pass.
Right.
It's about understanding the context.
Okay.
The things that can push someone down a certain path.
So are we saying that everyone from a tough background?
No, not at all.
Okay.
It's not like, oh, you're from poverty, you're going to be a criminal.
Right.
It's about acknowledging the hurdles, the challenges.
The barriers.
Yeah, for someone like Sheldon growing up surrounded by all that.
Crime, violence.
Yeah, the pull must have been huge.
It's like he was set up to fail, almost.
In a way, yeah. And that's where recidivism comes in.
Recidivism, that's the...
likelihood of reoffending.
Right.
It's complicated, but we know things like poverty,
lack of jobs,
support systems,
all of that.
It increases the risk.
So even if someone wants to change...
It's an uphill battle.
Big time. Imagine, you're in prison for years.
Yeah.
You come out, criminal record.
No job prospects.
Exactly. And no one to help you.
It's a recipe for disaster.
Pretty much. It's tough to break that cycle.
And Sheldon, he was in for 25 years.
Think about how much changed out here.
Technology, everything.
It's like a whole new world.
Right.
That disorientation
stigma
makes it even tougher.
Okay, so we've got these systemic issues. But what about the programs, the rehab programs?
That's the big question.
Do they work?
People have been arguing about that forever.
I bet.
Some say punish them, deter them.
Right.
Others say no, rehabilitate them, lower the recidivism rates.
What does the research say?
It's mixed, honestly.
Oh, okay.
Some programs like cognitive behavioral therapy or vocational training, they show some promise.
So it works sometimes?
Sometimes, but other studies, not so much.
So it's not a magic bullet?
Nope. It depends on the person, the program, the support they get after. Makes you wonder, even if Sheldon did change in prison, would it have been enough?
Would he have gotten the help he needed out here?
Pretty good question.
He spent his whole life in that world, crime and violence,
right?
Even with the best intentions.
That pull is strong.
Really strong, especially with all those challenges coming back.
And then we have the murder, Colin Small.
Yeah.
How do we square that with the reformed Sheldon?
It's the question everyone's asking. His supporters, even Joe Rogan.
What did Rogan say?
He was like, I can't believe it, speculating that maybe prison messed him up.
Yeah, I can see that.
It's a possibility, right?
It's possible, yeah. And now we have to consider the psychological effects of being locked up.
Trauma.
Long-term effects on behavior.
It's another layer, right? We're not just talking about the physical stuff.
Yeah.
It's the emotional, the psychological toll.
The isolation, the violence.
And maybe scars, deep scars.
So someone could be doing all the programs.
Yeah.
But still be struggling with this underlying trauma.
Absolutely, and that could lead them back to that dark place.
So how do we address that?
It raises questions about how we do rehabilitation.
Are we doing enough for their mental health?
Yeah. Are we dealing with the trauma?
With Sheldon, we don't know the answer to that.
But it shows us we need a different approach.
More holistic, you mean?
Yeah. Not just the crime, but the why behind it.
Right. The root of it.
It's about recognizing that change.
Yeah.
It's a process, a long process.
Not just education, job training,
It's the psychological, the emotional healing.
It's all connected.
It all plays a part.
We're seeing a theme here.
What's that?
Complexity, this whole case.
From the systemic stuff to the programs to the trauma.
It's all nuanced.
Yeah, it's messy, there are contradictions.
There's no easy answer.
And that's what makes this deep dive so fascinating.
It challenges us to think.
To question what we think we know.
To see the gray areas.
There's no black and white here.
Nope. And that's why we have these conversations.
To wrestle with these tough questions.
And to explore the justice system, what it means to be human. Okay, so we're dealing with all this complexity.
Yeah.
Then we have these conflicting views on Sheldon.
Right. His supporters, they're saying he's a changed man.
Highlighting his work with the youth.
But then you have the evidence.
The brutality of it all.
Yeah, it's hard to believe someone who talked about second chances
could do something like that.
It's like we have two different Sheldons.
And it's up to the courts to figure it out.
But even if he's guilty, the questions will remain.
Did he really change? Did his past play a role?
What can we learn from this to prevent it from happening again?
What needs to change in the system, the programs, our understanding of behavior?
We need to be talking about this, thinking critically, having these tough conversations.
We've covered so much ground.
We have.
But it feels like we're just scratching the surface.
There's always more to uncover.
What stood out to you the most? What questions are you left with?
I keep thinking about that contrast, the transformation versus the crime. It makes you wonder about redemption, about real change. Can we even judge character?
It makes me think about hero worship.
How we put people on pedestals.
Ignoring their past.
And the fact that they can mess up again.
I'm also stuck on those systemic issues.
Yeah.
The poverty, the cycle of crime, how many more Sheldons are out there.
Trapped in the system.
It's a lot to think about.
It is. It can feel overwhelming.
But there's also hope, right? We're having this conversation.
We're questioning things.
We're not shying away from the hard stuff.
That's how we learn, how we grow.
How we make things better.
It's uncomfortable, but it's necessary.
It's about pushing for a more just world.
And a more compassionate one.
And that's a powerful message for everyone listening.
It is.
This journey, searching for understanding, for truth.
It requires us to be uncomfortable.
To embrace the messy, to keep asking questions.
Don't let the questions fade.
Keep digging, keep exploring, keep talking about this.
Yeah, exactly.
It's funny, as we're going through all this with Sheldon Johnson, there's this line from the Joe Rogan thing that keeps popping into my head.
Oh, yeah.
He says, this is how fast your life can change from just one simple mistake.
Oh, wow.
Talk about irony, right?
It's chilling almost,
Like, was he hinting at something?
Foreshadowing?
Or was that just like part of the whole act,
The persona he built.
The guy was smart, articulate.
Oh, yeah.
He knew how to present himself. Makes you think, was he trying to convince himself? Or was it all just a game?
It's a good question. Like, was he fooling himself, too?
One of the biggest mysteries here.
Yeah.
He fooled a lot of people.
Professionals, even.
Josh Dubin. He seemed to really believe in Sheldon.
Makes you wonder, can we ever really know someone?
It's about this story, right?
A narrative.
He had this amazing redemption story.
And we love those.
We want to believe in second chances.
The comeback kid.
But sometimes that makes us miss the warning signs.
Red flags.
Were there any, looking back?
The video does point out, Sheldon's past was pretty violent.
Right.
Not just seeing it, but being a part of it.
Years in prison. That environment.
Surrounded by,
hardened criminals.
Exactly. Could that have, rubbed off on him?
And even his so-called turning point.
The prison awakening.
Maybe that was just survival,
Adapting.
To cope with being locked up.
Playing the game.
Which leads to the question, was he ever really sorry for what he did before?
Ooh, that's a tough one.
Was it all an act to get out?
To manipulate the system?
I don't know.
It goes deep, right?
It does.
Like, what is human nature? Can we truly change?
Or are we always shaped by our past? And if Sheldon, with all he had going for him...
Education, the advocacy...
This platform.
The Joe Rogan spotlight.
If he couldn't escape the violence...
What does that say about us? About redemption?
It's a lot to process.
It is. It challenges everything.
This whole deep dive, it's been like a reality check.
On the system, on human behavior, on truth itself.
There are no easy answers here.
But that's okay.
Yeah.
It's about asking the questions.
Keeping the conversation going.
Yeah.
So where do we go from here? What do we take from all of this?
I think the biggest thing is be critical,
Don't just accept everything at face value.
Be skeptical, question things.
Celebrate those redemption stories, but
But remember, people are complicated.
there's always more to the story.
And maybe, Sheldon's case, it can be a starting point.
To rethink how we do things.
Criminal justice, rehabilitation, how we help people coming back into society.
Yeah, that's important.
It's a reminder, too, that change, real change,
It's a journey.
it takes work, honesty, a commitment to doing better.
It's been a wild ride, this deep dive.
It has.
Not just the crazy story, but the stuff it makes us think about.
Justice, redemption, good versus evil.
All the gray areas. So if this got you thinking, if you have questions,
Doubts, a desire to learn more.
don't let that go.
Keep digging.
Keep exploring. Keep the conversation alive.
And keep questioning.
Until next time, stay curious.